President Richard M. Nixon was our 37th president. He was a leader, victor, and fighter for the American way, but on August 15, 1971, he made a decision that would fundamentally change world economics. This decision is regarded as the Nixon shock and was a major turning point in history. The Nixon shock was when President Nixon formally ended the gold standard. The gold standard was where our currency was backed by gold.
We must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world. In the past 7 years, there's been an average of one international monetary crisis every year. Now, who gains from these crises? The American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
Executive Order 11615 was not only the end of the 179-year-old monetary system in the United States, but it also changed world economics. The gold standard was, up until that point, the only monetary system known to the United States. In this system, you could exchange your gold note for a gold coin. The exchange rate for dollars to gold was set as a standard through the Bretton Woods Agreement. This system highly favored the American dollar and set exchange at $35 an ounce. The gold standard was first introduced to the United States in 1792 by the first treasurer, Alexander Hamilton. This monetary system was a bimetallic, or silver and gold, system. This bimetallic system's history has been rough. When the Civil War broke out, the government had to suspend all silver and gold payments. Later, in 1900, the Gold Standard Act was passed, leaving gold to solely back our currency. The outbreak of World War I led to the demise of the gold standard globally. In 1933, President Roosevelt banned all private ownerships of gold. This was because the value of gold as a precious metal overtook the value it had as a currency. Finally, in 1971, President Nixon ended the gold standard. But during the 1960s, French President Charles de Gaulle made a plea for countries to revert back to the gold standard.
Le fait que beaucoup d'États
The fact that many countries accept as a principle dollars as good as gold for the payment of the differences existing to their advantage in the American balance of trade. This very fact leads Americans to get into debt and to get into debt for free at the expense of other countries. Because what the U.S. owes them, it is paid, at least in part, with dollars they are the only ones allowed to emit. Considering the serious consequences a crisis would have in such a domain, we think that measures must be taken on time to avoid it. We consider necessary that international trade be established, as it was the case before the great misfortunes of the world, on an indisputable monetary base, and one that does not bear the mark of any particular country. Which base? In truth, no one sees how one could really have any standard criterion other than gold. Charles de Gaulle knew the consequences of currencies not being backed by any tangible item. Unfortunately, these currencies were becoming more and more popular. A currency not backed by any tangible item is called a fiat currency. A fiat currency has no intrinsic value other than the faith the citizens have in the currency and the government. This means that the intrinsic or asset value of a $1 bill and a $100 bill are the same. Most countries are fiat currencies, and as there is no item to trade off of, such as gold, and there is no intrinsic value, trade is very difficult. For example, if America wished to trade with Ecuador, the American government would have to consult with the Ecuador government to find the value of each currency and then exchange it. It would be easier if both America and Ecuador had the same currency. It is speculated that Charles de Gaulle also knew that the American dollar was not backed by gold 100%. This meant that in the 1960s and 1970s, the United States government was lying about how much gold they actually had in relation to how many dollars were in circulation. De Gaulle was somewhat correct in his assessment of the American dollar. When President Nixon took office, he inherited an economic mess. The economy was at a time of high inflation, which meant that the purchasing power of the dollar went down as the cost of items went up. The previous administration tried to combat the inflation by printing more dollars to pump into the economy. This method failed, as the amount of gold on reserve did not increase with the amount of money in circulation. President Nixon made the hard decision to end the gold standard. Ending the gold standard would ultimately do two things. It would end the Bretton Woods Agreement, giving birth to the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. It would free our economy from being bound to one resource. Some economists believe that freeing our currency from gold was good. Others believed it was bad. It allowed our economy to be free, but the government can control the value of our currency. It did not affect our economic strength, though. A currency's economic strength can be measured by the gross domestic product, or GDP. The United States GDP has been rising since 1900 and seems to be operating independently from our economic system. This, however, is no sign that the United States is on the right economic path. Congressman Ron Paul believes that the government should return to the gold standard. He thinks that it is time to take action and save the American dollar to prevent further financial trouble. This plan, however, would bankrupt and ruin our economy. Even though President Nixon made the right decision in taking the American dollar off of the gold standard, every fiat currency is destined to fail. This is because a fiat currency has no intrinsic value, so in ending the gold standard, Nixon turned the value of the American dollar into nothing.